We're in South Hadley, Massachusetts today. We're going to talk about the St. Patrick's Church. And this church here is the third edition of the St. Patrick's Church. The first edition was on Crescent Street in South Hadley. It was a 7 Crescent Lane, and the rectory for it still exists behind that area. So it was near the street, the church, but the rectory was quite far back. And it still exists, and that's incredible. And that rectory used to be the first Providence Hospital also. So most people think they're seeing the second Providence Hospital on Route 5 in Holyoke, but they're not seeing the third one. And so it started out here, and it didn't stay on Crescent Lane for very long. It ended up moving down into the falls because the reason why is they had so much of their parishioners down here and not up a mile up that road. And that was a big deal back then because remember, there was no cars and people would have to walk. Most people were just workers in mills. They didn't have carriages even to get there, or horses even. And I'm going to tell you some of the first pastors. Patrick Harkins was the first one. He was the pastor for 11 years here in the St. Patrick's. And then the next one came along was David McGrath, then Lawrence Deverin, and then Eugene Torr, and he was the one that brought the church down to this location here. And this even is not the church. It is the third church, a third edition of it. The second edition that was brought down here, I have a picture on my website, and so you can be able to see it. All right, and then I went through some changes. Now, next to it is an old rectory. All right, and then between them is an old chapel behind there. And there is actually one of the biggest chapels around. And since it was a mission church of the St. Jerome's Church in Holyoke, which also is a big chapel, I think they had an idea to build our chapels large. And this one is attached to the back. There's also a social center in the far back. All right, then it has a large parking lot around here. Now, if you would come out here in 1900 and saw the old church, it would look like one of the old churches of Holyoke. It had a large steeple to it, larger church. Now the problem is that there were floods in 1936 and 1938, right? And they recovered from both of those, get all the water out of the church, and then I believe it was in the latter part of 1938 or 1939, they had a fire. And that fire burnt the whole church down. And so in 1940, this one was built in this place, much smaller, no steeple to it, right? But it's a good substitute. It's a neo-Gothic. You can tell by the side windows. And it's very active. And that social center is very active too. So there's a lot going on for it. Now the next pastor come along, John Conway, 1901, 1913, he opened up the St. Anne's Mission Church in Chicopee, the Fairfield neighborhood. And so for a while, St. Patrick's had a mission church going. And it was able to, the trolley from Holyoke came right up the street by St. Patrick's. And then on its return trip, it went into the Fairview neighborhood of Chicopee, right by the St. Anne's Church. And so once a year, to have both congregations get to know each other, they'd have a trolley come out here, they'd fill it up, and then it'd go up the hill, go right by the St. Anne's Church, and everyone get off, and they'd have a double mass together once a year. That was wonderful. All right, now the last piece of any church, of course, they never had a school, never had a convent, but it did have a cemetery. And that cemetery is up in the Plains area. It's called St. Rose Cemetery, shared, of course. And it was made about, I think, 1886. And so in the beginning, the parishioners that died here would be buried in the St. Jerome's Cemetery in Holyoke. All right, and so it had a lot going, and it still has a lot going to it. I go to mass there once in a while, And I was amazed the last time I went how many people were inside. It was actually totally filled up. And so it's a very active community, and if you ever get a chance to stop in this neighborhood, it's in a great neighborhood near 2 other churches, near the Hadley Library, and back of us is the former South Hadley Navigational Canal. And right where I'm parked, there used to be the first edition of 3 of the South Hadley Public Library. So it's a very historic location, and I hope you get to appreciate it. Even though it's only a 1940 church, there's still a lot going for it in terms of its history. Okay, thank you very much.